Hi, today we're going to give a video on installing a set of double doors, West Tennessee Ornamental Door Company, and so this is the beginning of it. We'd already measured the width and height. We had purchased the product. We ordered 69.5 by 77.5, hinge left active, okay? This door here is the inactive side. As you can see, it's got these flush bolts at the top and bottom. And one thing I want to point out right out of the gate, we need to make sure that anytime you're working with one of these double doors, we actually put a kind of a boot around the bottom flush bolt. Currently the door is upside down, but when you stand the door right side up, we need to make sure that you're very careful. You do not put the weight down on the flush bolt or it can break. So we do put a warning sticker here as a reminder, okay? Now, the first thing that we do, we've already measured the height at 77.5. We're going to deduct 3/16 of an inch off of that, which would make 77 and 5/16, and we're going to hacksaw it. Before we do that, let's just quickly pre-drill our Z-bar through the top and bottom hinge on both with a 5/32 drill bit. Okay, so we had measured the overall height at 77.5. We took off 3/16 of an inch, cut it at 77 and 5/16. We set the door into the opening. I'm using a block of wood and the butt end of the hammer here. And a couple of things you got to make sure of. One, that you have enough room, clearance at the top for the header to go in there. And two, to make sure that there is a little bit of clearance at the bottom for the flush bolt. We've got both of that now. We're going to pre-drill our holes at 5/32 so the wood doesn't split, and then put a number 10 by 2 in there. Now I had removed the little shipping screw, the silver one. Now we're just going to put the final screw in the center. Okay, so now we have the inactive door installed on through the hinges, so the door will swing open and closed. Next step, we're going to put the header in, make certain that we flush it up with the side Z-bar. We're going to want to adjust the gap to where it's good, and so we're just going to set some screws in there. These are number 10 by 1 Phillips head. Once we have that set, basically what I want to measure from the center to underneath here, and then set this side of the header the same depth, same length. So we got just under 77 and a half, so call it 77 and 7/16. Okay, so what I've done is took the active door, I cut the Z-bar the same length as we did on the other side, which was like 77. This one actually was about 77 and 3/8, to where that was 5/16. But the whole idea is you want to make sure and use some kind of adjustable tool underneath to get the top in line. Don't be concerned about the crack down the center. There's a piece that's going to adjust that out. But you obviously want to get the two doors in line. You want to try to adjust this crack. So I loosened this screw out and pulled it back down. I've got the header a nice even crack. So now we're just going to attach the hinges to the jamb. Then we're going to put a couple of 1-inch screws in the header to keep it in line. So now both doors are going to open. So then the next step, we're going to get to the center astragal to take that gap out of there. But you want to make sure that both doors open freely and swing. Okay, so now we've got both doors installed. We've got the header across the top. Before we can put the astragal on, we actually need to bore for the flush bolts, and it's best to start on the top one first. So one thing, you would throw it and find the center line here, and then you can find the center line here, or you can just do it easy and get any kind of material, in this case just an old stick of lipstick, and you basically put it on the top, close the door to the position that you want, and throw it to where it kisses. Okay, so once it does that, now I've got a mark here where that bolt is throwing out, and so you'll want to drill a 9/16 hole into the top header. Okay, so now we test it, it's lining up good. Then in the kit is a striker plate. Okay, there are two different styles. This one has an oval. I like this one the best. And then we're going to bore 2 holes to attach that and put 2 1.5-inch screws in there. Now it's lining up, and so you need that striker plate to give you the security on the flush bolt. Now I'm going to go to the bottom one. I'm going to keep this one latched. One helpful tip is close the 2 doors. Make sure that they're flush here, and make sure that the 2 doors are meeting at the bottom, and it appears that they are meeting very well. So I'm going to mark the center line where to bore for that bottom flush bolt. Okay, so after we got the top flush bolt bored, I marked the bottom one where to drill the 9/16 hole into the wood, and then put my striker plate on there and mounted the 2 screws that go into the wood down there. And so as you can see, the door will close and is locked in with the striker plates. Next, we're going to put the bottom expander on. Of course, there are 2 expanders. The inactive side is the one that has a hole in the bottom of it for the guide, and on the hinge side, it's been notched. So I'm going to get this installed, slip it up under there, and attach it to the door. Okay, so next we installed the bottom expander. We made sure to get the one with the hole in it that would line up with the bottom flush bolt. I simply slipped it underneath the door, closed the door, adjusted it down to get a tight seal on the bottom, drilled 2 holes in the face of the door, a 5/32 drill bit, and installed a number 10x1 screw. You got to make sure on this screw that you get about 2 inches over, because inside of the tubing is that flush bolt that's going down, and you want to make sure that your screw doesn't stab into the flush bolt, because then that won't operate, okay? Then I opened the door and repeated the same step on the inside, okay? Next, I installed the vault pins. There are 2 holes in our door behind the hinges, okay, top and bottom. And in the pack are these 2 vault pins. They're a slotted, flathead slotted screw, and they're about 1.5 inches long. And what you do is simply drill a 3/16 hole in the Z-bar on into the jamb, lining it up with the hole, and leave it sticking out about 1/2 inch top and bottom. So what that does for you is when the door is closed, now that pin just went inside of the door, okay? It went inside of the door, so even if somebody took the screws out of the face of the door, they cannot get the door out of the opening because there are vault pins top and bottom. And the good thing is they're non-moving, so once they're installed, they don't shift. It's a very good fit. So next, we are going to install this center astragal. What that's going to do is adjust the gap out between the 2 doors, and essentially it's got the felt weather stripping on it. There are 3 holes punched in it, top and bottom for your flush bolts. The center holes are for your lock to go through. We've already notched at the top where it's going to interlock with the header, and so you'll know that that's got to go at the top, and make certain that all cuts are made off of the bottom. And the differences between the 2 is where we've already kind of routed out. It's taller on the front side, but we've routed out here about 1/4 inch. Now what I did, I measured from the striker plate here to striker plate here. I came up with 77 1/4. I need a little bit of clearance, about 1/16 on top and bottom, so I cut that 77 1/8, okay? What I did when I tapped it on here, this astragal is designed to take a lot of gap up, and so when it's collapsed all the way down, occasionally it can bump into the glass clips. So I actually had to remove the 4 glass clips that were holding the glass panel on, so I just got those out of the way. I attached it and got my gap lined up. Then I'll go back and reinstall those clips, and they won't be in the way. So essentially, I cut it. I opened the mouth of the bottom astragal up with the head of my hammer, okay? Basically just kind of put it in there because I want this astragal to grab the bite over the expander, both on the outside and the inside. Therefore, that's why it allows it to go from top to bottom, and it's going to give a real nice seal. So I actually tapped it on at the bottom, tapped it on all the way along. I closed the door. I got a nice even gap. It's about a 3/16 inch gap because you want to make sure to leave room for the striker plate that we're going to install on the inside here. That's what's going to give us the security we need. So once I got my crack evenly spaced, I made sure to get below the flush bolt, again, so that we're not drilling right into where the flush bolt hits, and basically drilled about 4 holes and attached it to the door on the outside, and I'm going to do the same thing on the inside. So that's how we got our astragal. And the next step is I'm going to put the expander on the active door. So we put our expander on the active door, adjusted it down where we had a nice seal on there, drilled 2 holes on the face of it, 5/32, came in there with a 1-inch number 10 by 1, and repeated the step on the inside. So now we've got that part of it installed. I went on ahead and put the Lockset in according to the instructions within the lock, and now we're going to attach the striker plate to the inactive door, and there is a certain way. This is what's going to give you the security. The striker plate has holes that are slightly offset, and they have to be that way on this style lock, so the thicker material goes with the knob here, so that'll allow the door to pull deeper towards the felt weather stripping, and then the deadbolt will throw through that hole. So I'm going to go on ahead and attach this to the astragal. Okay, so I've installed the striker plate onto the inactive door, which went on top of the astragal, and as you can see, the thicker material goes in conjunction with the knob, and it just is designed to where that has to pull it deeper against the felt weather stripping. Okay, so once I attach that, we'll close it back up. And let you see that when the door closes, it should latch on its own. The deadbolt should throw, and now the door is secured. So make certain that you always put those striker plates on it. Next, we're going to install finish up the vault pins on this door, put the closure in the wind chain, and that's pretty much it. So we'll move on to that. Okay, so what we did next was we installed the closure, and on some models we have this mullion between the top glass and the mid panel, and there's a little groove down the center of that mullion, and that's where you want to drill to shoot any screws. This way you never hit the top or the mid panel. But put the bracket in the back, attach it here, adjust it out. There's a little screw on the end of it. You can follow the instructions within the closure kit. But that's basically the way you want it to close. You know, fast enough to come on and close, you know, but hard enough to where it'll latch. And the other thing we put on was the wind chain. Now, a lot of people don't put those on there, but they will actually save the life of the closure, because what happens, even if it's not wind, a person comes slamming out of the door, the wind chain, it compresses, and that's what saves the closure here. So I went on ahead and put all the screws, finished up that, sealing up real nice, locking real secure. That's how the double door install is completed.